The envelope felt heavy in my hands, despite containing just a single sheet of paper. My father Marcus's stern expression told me everything I needed to know before I even opened it. This wasn't going to be a Merry Christmas Eve. I'm Elena, and this was the moment my family decided I wasn't worth keeping around. Well, aren't you going to open it? My sister Rebecca's sugary, sweet voice cut through the tension in our family's living room. She sat perched on the arm of Mom's favorite leather chair, already wearing the diamond bracelet they'd given her moments earlier. The crackling fireplace and twinkling Christmas tree felt like a mockery now. I carefully broke the seal, aware of 4 pairs of eyes boring into me. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Not exactly your typical holiday guest. I don't understand, I said, my voice surprisingly steady as I read the document. You're cutting me out of the will completely? Mom, Diana to her society friends, didn't even look up from her wine glass. It's for the best, dear. You've made your choices, and we've made ours. My choices? I laughed, but it came out hollow. You mean starting my own business instead of joining the family company? A bakery. Dad's voice dripped with disdain. We spent a fortune on your education, and you want to spend your life making cupcakes? They're not just cupcakes, Dad. It's my dream. Dreams don't pay bills, he cut me off. Rebecca understands responsibility. She's already showing real promise at the firm. My sister's smirk grew wider. Don't be dramatic, Elena. You knew this was coming. I mean, what did you expect? I folded the paper carefully, my hands trembling slightly. The Christmas tree lights reflected off the glossy paper, creating dancing patterns that reminded me of the sparklers we used to wave around as kids, back when family meant something different. Actually, I stood up, smoothing my dress. I expected better from my parents. Silly me. Elena, Mr. Harrison intervened, perhaps we could discuss this after the holidays? There's nothing to discuss. Mom's voice was ice. The decision is final. I walked to the coat rack, pulling on my winter jacket. The wool felt scratchy against my neck, or maybe that was just the lump forming in my throat. Where are you going? Dad demanded. We haven't even had dinner yet. I've lost my appetite. I reached for my purse, pausing at the doorway. You know what's funny? You all think you're punishing me, but really. I smiled, thinking about the secret I'd been keeping. You might be punishing yourselves more than you realize. What's that supposed to mean? Rebecca stood up, her perfectly manicured brows furrowing. Merry Christmas, the first said, ignoring her question, and good luck. Something tells me you're going to need it. The heavy oak door closed behind me with a satisfying thud. Outside, snow was falling softly, muffling the sound of Christmas carols drifting from neighboring houses. I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. Sophie? Yeah, it's done. They did exactly what we expected. I walked to my car, boots crunching in the fresh snow. No, I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. Remember that thing we talked about? I think it's time. As I drove away from my childhood home, I couldn't help but smile. They thought they were writing me out of their story, but they had no idea I was about to become the author of their downfall. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Hope you're happy with yourself. You've ruined Christmas. I typed back quickly on the contrary, sis. This is the best Christmas gift I could have gotten, Freedom. Turning onto the main road, I headed toward downtown where my real future waited. The family might have their precious will, but I had something better, a plan. And thanks to their own oversight, I had the means to execute it perfectly. The vacation house they'd carelessly left in my name years ago would fund my dreams and their nightmare. They just didn't know it yet. Some legacies aren't inherited, I whispered to myself, watching the family mansion shrink in my rearview mirror. They're built from scratch, just like the perfect cake. The snow kept falling, covering my tire tracks, erasing any trace of my presence from their perfectly manicured driveway. By this time next year, everything would be different, and I couldn't wait to serve them their just desserts. 3 months earlier, I stood in front of the lakeside vacation house, key in hand, while Sophie whistled low beside me. The autumn breeze carried the scent of pine needles and possibility, and they seriously forgot this was in your name? She ran her hand along the pristine siding. A whole ass vacation house? Dad put it in my name 5 years ago for tax purposes. I unlocked the door, breathing in the musty air. They haven't used it in 3 years, probably don't even remember it exists. The interior was exactly as I remembered, all pine furniture and nautical decorations, frozen in time like a perfectly preserved museum of family memories I no longer wanted. Dust motes danced in the beams of sunlight streaming through the lakefront windows. "How much do you think it's worth?" Sophie asked, peering through the floor-to-ceiling glass at the water beyond. I pulled out my phone, showing her the realtor's estimate. Her eyes widened. "Holy shit, Elena! That's enough to open your bakery and then some. The down payment, equipment, first year's rent, everything." I smiled, running my fingers along the dusty kitchen counter. This space, once a symbol of my family's wealth and privilege, would become the seed of their undoing. Your parents are going to lose their minds when they find out. That's the best part, they won't find out until it's too late. I opened the fridge, grimacing at the ancient condiments inside. The property transfer was legal. They signed it over to me fair and square. Sophie flopped onto the couch, sending up a cloud of dust. "Okay, walk me through this master plan of yours again." "Simple. I sell the house, use the money to open Sweet Revenge Bakery. Still think that name's a bit much." "Fine. The Dreamweaver Bakery." I threw a dusty throw pillow at her. "One, establish myself and wait." "Wait for what?" "For karma to do its thing." I sat beside her, lowering my voice even though we were alone. "See, what my family doesn't know is that their precious company is in trouble. Big trouble. How do you know that? Remember my friend James from commercial banking? Let's just say their last loan application wasn't exactly approved." The next few weeks were a blur of real estate agents, paperwork, and secret meetings. The house sold faster than expected. Turns out lakefront property is quite desirable, even in need of updating. I met James for coffee one morning to review my business plan, the late October sun warming the cafe patio. "You're really doing this?" he said, scanning the documents. "I've got to admit, when you first mentioned it, I thought you were just venting. People always underestimate me." I slid him a sample of my latest recipe. "Try this." He took a bite of the lavender honey cake and closed his eyes. "Okay, scratch that. You're definitely doing this. This is incredible. That's not even my best recipe." I pulled out my laptop, showing him the location I'd found. "What do you think? Downtown, high-foot traffic, reasonable rent." He nodded approvingly. "You've done your homework. But are you sure you want to burn this bridge with your family? They burned it first." I closed the laptop firmly. "Besides, this isn't about revenge. It's about finally doing something for myself." But even as I said it, I couldn't ignore the satisfaction I felt knowing what was coming. The day I signed the lease, Sophie brought champagne to the empty storefront. We sat on the floor, drinking from paper cups, surrounded by my dreams taking physical form. To the Dreamweaver, she toasted, "May your revenge be as sweet as your pastries." "It's not revenge," I protested weakly. "Honey, you're literally using their forgotten vacation house to fund your independence while they're about to face financial ruin. That's some premium revenge right there." I couldn't argue with that. The contractor started work the next day, transforming the space into my vision. Every decision felt like a step further from my family's shadow. The warm copper light fixtures, the exposed brick walls, the custom display cases. The morning we installed the sign, I stood across the street, watching the gold letters catch the sunlight, Dreamweaver Bakery and Cafe. My dream, my name, my rules. My phone buzzed, a text from Rebecca. "Mom and Dad are worried about you. They say you're not returning their calls." I typed back, "Been busy, big things happening, whatever. Just don't come crying to us when your little hobby fails." I smiled, pocketing my phone as the first delivery of professional equipment arrived. Let them think I was playing at business. Let them dismiss me one last time. "Where do you want the ovens?" the delivery man called out. Against that wall, I pointed, where everyone walking by can see them through the windows. Because that was part of the plan too, letting success speak for itself, especially from the windows of my family's law firm just 2 blocks away. The sweet smell of karma was already in the air. And soon it would be baking. "We've got another line out the door." Sarah, my newest hire, called from the front. And 3 more wedding cake consultations just booked online. I wiped the flour from my hands and peeked through the kitchen door. The morning sun streamed through our front windows, illuminating a queue of eager customers that stretched past the neighboring shops. 3 months in, and the Dreamweaver had become the talk of downtown. Your red velvet cake just got featured on Food and Wine's Instagram, James announced, walking in through the back door. He'd taken to stopping by most mornings, usually with local business news and a hungry look in his eyes. Here. I handed him a fresh cranberry orange scone, payment for being my unofficial business advisor. Speaking of business, he lowered his voice, glancing around. Word on the street is your family's firm isn't doing so hot. They've had to let go of 3 junior partners already. I concentrated on piping delicate roses onto a wedding cake sample. Is that so? You know, most people would feel bad about their family struggling. Most people's families wouldn't disown them over following their dreams. I set down the piping bag. Besides, I warned them. Sort of. The bell above the door chimed, and I heard Sophie's familiar laugh. "Oh my God, you have to see this!" she called out, waving her phone. The local paper just published their Best of Downtown list. Guess who's #1 in the food category? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen. Well, well, I muttered, answering. To what do I owe the pleasure? Is it true? She didn't bother with hello. You're the one who bought that building on 3rd Street? I smiled, remembering the offer I'd made last week. The success of the Dreamweaver had left me with enough capital to start investing in real estate. Actually, I'm in the process of buying 3 buildings on 3rd Street. Why? That's... She paused. That's where Dad was planning to expand the firm. Oh, really? I sprinkled edible gold dust on a batch of macarons. Guess he'll have to find somewhere else. Property values are crazy downtown these days. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Doing what? Running a successful business? Making smart investments? Isn't that what you all wanted me to do? The line went quiet for a moment. Mom wants to know if you'll come to dinner next week. Sorry, Bex. I'm catering the mayor's daughter's wedding. I adjusted my chef's coat. But hey, feel free to stop by the bakery sometime. We make an amazing humble pie. After hanging up, I turned to find James and Sophie staring at me. That was cold, James said, but he was grinning. That was perfect, Sophie corrected. But you never told me about the buildings on 3rd Street. Because I just finalized the paperwork this morning. I pulled out a folder from under the counter. 3 historic buildings, prime location. And guess who's going to be my first tenant? Who? That artisanal coffee roaster you love. They're opening their flagship store. I showed them the lease agreement. Between their rent and the Dreamweaver's profits, I'll be able to buy 2 more properties by year's end. While your family firm downsizes, James mused. That's some masterful chess you're playing. A commotion from the front interrupted us. Through the kitchen window, I spotted my mother's perfectly coiffed hair in the crowd. Speaking of chess, I muttered, Showtime. The first stepped into the front, watching as she took in the bustling cafe, the elegant decor, the happy customers. Her expression shifted from disdain to surprise to something that looked almost like regret. Elena, she said stiffly. This is unexpected. Hi, Mom. What can I get you? Our signature dream cake is featured in Food and Wine this month. She flinched at my casual tone. Your father and I need to discuss something with you. Something important. I'm pretty busy here. I gestured to the full cafe. You know how it is, running a successful business and all. Please, she said. And for the first time in years, I heard a crack in her perfect facade. It's about the firm. We need your help. I let the words hang in the air, savoring them like the perfect bite of dessert. Behind her, Sophie was practically vibrating with anticipation. Well, I said finally, I do have a cancellation for my last appointment today. I could meet you at 5. I paused, then added with a sweet smile, at my office, of course. Mom's eyes darted around the bakery, my bakery, and she nodded stiffly. As she left, Sophie sidled up to me. You're going to make them grovel, right? I watched my mother's retreating form through the window, remembering Christmas Eve, remembering years of dismissal and disappointment. No, I said, turning back to my customers. I'm going to make them eat cake. At exactly 5:00, my parents walked into the Dreamweaver. The evening sun cast long shadows through the windows, and I'd closed early, sending my staff home. Only Sophie remained, pretending to clean tables while eavesdropping shamelessly. "Would you like some tea?" I offered, gesturing to the vintage tea set I'd arranged. "It's Earl Grey. Your favorite, Mom." "This isn't a social call," Dad snapped, but Mom put a hand on his arm. "Tea would be lovely," she said, settling into one of the copper-backed chairs. Her eyes kept darting around the bakery, taking in the fresh flowers, the gleaming display cases, the wall of press clippings. I poured 3 cups, adding a plate of lavender shortbread. "So, what brings you to my little hobby?" Dad's jaw tightened. "We need to discuss a business proposition." "Business?" I raised an eyebrow. I thought making cupcakes wasn't a real business. "Things have changed," Mom said carefully. "The firm is facing some temporary difficulties." "Temporary?" I took a sip of tea. "That's not what I heard. I heard you've laid off staff, lost major clients, and your credit rating is in the toilet." "How did you—" Dad started, then his eyes narrowed. "James, that little snake. James is a friend. Unlike family, friends actually look out for each other." Mom set down her cup with a clatter. "We're here because we need a partner, someone with liquid assets and business acumen." I couldn't help but laugh. "Business acumen? 3 months ago you said I was throwing my life away." "We were wrong," Mom said quietly, and for a moment, I almost believed her. "What you've built here, it's impressive, very impressive. The mayor's daughter's wedding, the press coverage, the property investments." Dad added, though it clearly pained him. "Ah," I interrupted. "So this is about 3rd Street, among other things." He pulled out a folder. "We're prepared to offer you a partnership in the firm. Full voting rights, equal share with Rebecca." I took the folder but didn't open it. "And what makes you think I'd want that?" "Because it's your legacy," Mom insisted. "Your birthright." "My legacy?" I stood up, walking to the wall of press clippings. "This is my legacy. Those buildings on 3rd Street, my legacy. This bakery that you said would fail, that's my legacy." "The firm is struggling," Dad admitted, his voice rough, "without an injection of capital." "You'll lose everything," I finished. "Funny how karma works, isn't it?" From her spot by the tables, Sophie didn't even pretend not to be listening anymore. "What do you want?" Mom asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "Name your price." I turned back to them, leaning against the counter. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about money. This is about respect, recognition, everything you never gave me. We're giving it now." Dad's fist hit the table, rattling the teacups. "No, you're not. You're here because you're desperate, because your perfect daughter Rebecca can't save you, and your backup plan just bought the buildings you needed." Mom's face paled. "The vacation house. That's how you funded all this. The vacation house you forgot was in my name?" "Yes. Turns out, I'm pretty good at managing assets when people underestimate me." "You planned this," Dad accused. "All of it." "No, you planned this. Every time you dismissed my dreams, every time you favored Rebecca, every time you tried to force me into your mold." I opened the folder, scanned the partnership offer, then slowly tore it in half. "I just adapted." "You're enjoying this," Mom whispered, "watching us suffer." "Actually, I'm not. I'm just finally standing up for myself." I gathered the torn papers. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding cake to finish." They stood, Dad's face red with anger, Mom's with shame. At the door, she turned back. "What about family?" she asked. "Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "It meant everything to me until Christmas Eve, when you showed me exactly how little it meant to you." After they left, Sophie let out a long whistle. "That was intense." "It's not over," I said, starting to clear the tea service. "They'll be back. And nothing. The firm can sink or swim on its own." I'm done playing their games. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "How dare you turn them down?" "They were trying to make peace." I typed back. "No, they were trying to save themselves." "Big difference. By the way, how's that corner office working out?" Sophie read the exchange over my shoulder. "You know what this calls for?" "What?" She grinned, pulling out 2 forks. "Revenge cake." We spent the next hour eating leftover wedding cake samples and planning my next property acquisition. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about succeeding so spectacularly they have to watch from the sidelines. They're filing for bankruptcy. James announced, bursting into my office early Monday morning. Your family's firm? It's happening. I looked up from the stack of invoices I'd been reviewing. Already? I thought they'd last at least another month. 3 major clients pulled out last week. Word got around about their financial troubles and he made a diving motion with his hand. It's like watching dominoes fall. My phone lit up with a call from Rebecca. I put it on speaker. "This is your fault!" she shrieked before I could say hello. "You did this to us!" "Actually, Bex, you did this to yourselves. I just refuse to save you. Mom's a mess. Dad hasn't left his study in 2 days. Is this what you wanted?" I signed the last invoice, pushing it aside. What I wanted was a family that supported me. What I got was disowned on Christmas Eve. "Funny how life works out. We're having a family dinner tonight," she said, her voice suddenly controlled. "You need to come." "Need to? I don't need to do anything. Please," she whispered, and for the first time since we were kids, I heard genuine emotion in her voice. "Everything's falling apart." I glanced at James, who shrugged. "Fine, what time? 7. And Elena, leave your attitude at that bakery of yours." I hung up, turning to James. "Want to be my backup?" He shook his head. "This is family business, but text me if you need an escape plan." At 7 sharp, I pulled up to my childhood home. The mansion looked different somehow, smaller, less intimidating, like seeing a childhood monster in daylight and realizing it's just a shadow. Rebecca opened the door before I could knock. "They're in the dining room. Try not to make things worse." "Lovely to see you too, sis." The dining room was a museum of uncomfortable memories. Formal dinners, lectures about responsibility, countless disappointments. Mom and Dad sat at opposite ends of the massive table, a feast laid out between them. "You came," Mom said softly. "I'm curious by nature. I took my old seat. So what's this about?" Dad cleared his throat. "We've made mistakes. Serious mistakes." "The firm," Mom started. "I know about the bankruptcy," I interrupted. "James told me this morning." "Of course he did," Rebecca muttered. "We've lost everything," Dad continued. "The house will have to be sold, the cars, the vacation homes." "Home," I corrected, singular. "I already sold the lake house, remember?" Mom flinched. "We deserve that, but, Elena, we're still family." "Are we?" "Because the last time we had dinner together, you handed me disinheritance papers as a Christmas gift." "We were wrong," Dad said, and the admission hung heavy in the air. "About everything. The firm, your bakery, you. The Dreamweaver is worth more than the firm now," Rebecca added bitterly. "Happy?" I pushed my untouched plate away. "What do you want from me?" "A chance," Mom said. "To make things right, to be a family again. And the fact that I'm successful now has nothing to do with it?" "We're not asking for money," Dad insisted. "No?" I raised an eyebrow. "Then what are you asking for?" "Forgiveness," Mom whispered. "A fresh start." I stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the garden where I'd once dreamed of having my wedding was overgrown, another casualty of their financial collapse. "You know what's ironic?" I turned back to them. "If you'd supported my dream from the beginning, I probably would have helped you now. But you made me prove myself by fighting you every step of the way." "We know," Dad said. "And we're sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix years of dismissal. Sorry doesn't erase Christmas Eve. Sorry doesn't—" "Then tell us what will," Rebecca burst out. "Tell us how to fix this." I looked at each of them, Mom's perfectly maintained facade cracking, Dad's proud shoulders slumped, Rebecca's mascara-stained cheeks. "Time," I said finally. "Time and proof that you've actually changed. Not because you need something from me, but because you actually understand what you did wrong." "And until then?" Mom asked. I reached into my bag, pulling out a small box. "Until then, you can have this. It's a new recipe I've been working on. I call it Humble Beginnings, dark chocolate with a hint of bitterness, covered in gold leaf." "Is this a joke?" Rebecca asked. "No," I replied, heading for the door. "It's a reminder. Sometimes you have to lose everything to appreciate what you had." "Elena," Dad called after me. "Will we see you again?" I paused in the doorway. "The bakery's open Tuesday through Sunday, 9 to 6. You know where to find me." Walking out, I felt lighter somehow. Not because I'd forgiven them, that would take time. but because finally, after all these years, they were the ones watching me walk away. The morning after the family dinner, I arrived at the Dreamweaver to find Rebecca waiting outside, still wearing yesterday's clothes. "Have you been here all night?" "No," she rubbed her arms against the dawn chill. "Just since 5. I unlocked the door, and she followed me in, dark circles under her eyes. "I've been thinking about what you said. About proof." I started my morning routine, firing up the ovens and checking the prep list. "I want a job." The measuring cup I was holding clattered to the counter. "Excuse me?" "I want to work here. For you." She straightened her shoulders, though her designer blazer looked rumpled. "I need to understand." "Understand what?" "Everything. How you did this, how you knew it would work, how you're so confident now." I studied her face for any sign of manipulation. "You've never worked a service job in your life." "I know." She swallowed hard. "I'll start at the bottom. Washing dishes, sweeping floors, whatever you need." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I have nothing left to lose." Her voice cracked. "The firm's gone, my savings are gone, my apartment." She trailed off. "Let me guess, Dad was paying for it?" She nodded miserably. "Fine." I tossed her an apron. "Start by wiping down all the tables, then we'll talk." For the next 6 months, I watched my perfectly manicured sister transform. She learned to make lattes, to handle difficult customers, to balance books honestly. Her hands grew calloused, her smile genuine. Mom took a job as a retail clerk at a department store. Dad swallowed his pride and became a dishwasher at one of my tenants' cafes. Then came the business awards ceremony. I adjusted my name tag, Elena Fernandez, CEO Dreamweaver Enterprises. Beside me, Rebecca fidgeted with her own regional director. "Stop fussing," I whispered. "You've earned your place here. Did you know Mom and Dad would be here?" She nodded toward the back of the room where our parents sat, dressed in their new, more modest clothes. They bought tickets like everyone else. I smoothed my dress. That's progress. The mayor stepped up to the podium, tapping the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this year's recipient has transformed our downtown, created hundreds of jobs, and shown us that success comes in many flavors. Sometimes literally." Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. Dreamweaver Enterprises started as a single bakery, defying expectations and conventional wisdom. Today it encompasses 12 locations, multiple real estate holdings, and a commitment to community development that has revitalized our city center. I stood as my name was called, the applause washing over me. From the corner of my eye, I saw Mom dabbing at tears, Dad sitting straight-backed and proud. "Thank you," I began, reaching into my pocket for my notes. Instead, my fingers found the torn Christmas Eve envelope. I'd carried it with me every day since, a reminder of where I'd started. I said it on the podium. "Success isn't inherited," I said, looking directly at my family. "It's baked from scratch with equal parts determination and defiance. Sometimes the people who should believe in you don't, and that's okay. It just means you have to believe in yourself twice as hard." Sophie whooped from her table, making everyone laugh. But success without growth, personal growth, is just numbers on a spreadsheet. Real success is watching people change, including yourself. It's seeing your sister trade privilege for purpose. I smiled at Rebecca. It's watching your parents learn humility through honest work. It's building something bigger than revenge. Mom's hand found Dad's, squeezing tight. Dreamweaver started as my dream of independence. Now it's a dream of second chances, for downtown, for our employees, for family, even for those who once tried to write you out of their story. I picked up the torn envelope. This was my disinheritance paper. I kept it to remind myself of rejection. Now I'm keeping it to remind myself of redemption. Not just mine, but everyone's capacity to change when they're willing to do the work. After the ceremony, we gathered in my newest building, a community center where we'd teach others to build their dreams from scratch. Rebecca ran the small business training program. Mom taught retail management. Dad, still washing dishes at the cafe, shared his hard-earned lessons about humility. "You know," Rebecca said softly, watching new entrepreneurs fill the classrooms, "that Christmas Eve was the best thing that ever happened to this family." "How so?" "It broke us down to nothing. Made us rebuild. Made us real." I looked around at my empire, not just the buildings and businesses, but the people. My sister finding purpose in honest work. My parents learning humility and pride in equal measure. My friends who believed in me when no one else did. Real is good, I agreed, pulling out plans for our next expansion. Now, who's ready to help others get real too? Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in proving others wrong, it's in helping them become right. Story 2. Hi everyone. Emma is my name, and if you have a moment, I have a tale. That is a bit of a wild ride, one that plunges into a battle for dignity, love, and treachery. Prior to plunging into the deep end, allow me to create the scene and present my small drama's characters to you. Emma, it begins with me, born into a situation that many would consider privileged. All that jazz and a silver spoon. However, I was brought up to value hard effort above freebies, even with the squishy beginning. In the area of engine additives, my dad is the king, a self-made guy who built an empire out of a niche. Mom is also no slouch. Her name became synonymous with elegance after she started a beauty shop business from the bottom up. Despite the possibility of a messy divorce when I was 19, they managed to keep it elegant, dividing everything in two while still managing to stay friends. Mom got married again, but they didn't have any more children than me. Dad remained single, happy with his business and bachelorhood. Enter the Jake stage, correct? My spouse, or as I now consider him, the impetus behind my emotional turmoil. After I got a job teaching music to kids who had more energy than common sense, I got married right out of college. Up until we had a bump in the road, life seemed pretty sweet. Suddenly, Jake's true color began to show through when I became pregnant. Jake casually threw the grenade into our lives one lazy Sunday while he was sprawled out on the couch with his feet up. Emma? Why don't you just quit your job, darling? Keep the infant at home. We'll get by. I almost suffocated on my tea. Jake, quit my work. We can't afford it with just your pay, you know. In addition, I enjoy my job. A sneer played on his lips as he dismissed it with a sweep of his hand. Get them. We're not your typical people. Your father is quite wealthy. With a little assistance from him, we'll be all set. My blood began to boil. Jake, that's not the point. I'm not using my parents' fortune to support our daily needs. Jake wouldn't let it go even after we decided to live within our means. Nor in front of his parents, nor over dinner. He mentioned it once more. Emma is thinking about taking a break from her job. You know, what with the impending kid. Carol, his mother, who has a keen sense of advantage and a sharp tongue, stepped in. Oh, that's fantastic. You two don't need to worry about anything when you're with Emma's family. In an attempt to maintain my composure, I slightly tightened my grip on my fork. In reality, we haven't made any decisions and plan to handle things independently. Thank you. Frank, Jake's father, who never misses a beat, added a laugh. Emma, why choose the difficult route? You could be living comfortably with a little assistance from your parents. Why miss that chance? From then, the discussion with Jake's parents took a turn for the worst, revealing detailed accounts of a life spent on my parents' pay. It seemed like a betrayal with every word. Extending the knife's twist, they failed to notice me. A ticket to a comfortable life was visible to them. As I lay in bed next Jake that night, I couldn't get rid of the loneliness. Jake, do you truly believe that's how we should be depending on my parents? Hoping for some indication that I had misinterpreted the situation, I muttered. With those eyes that used to melt my heart, he turned over and faced me. It's not about necessity, Emma. It has to do with intelligence. We deserve a break, and your parents can afford it. Why not accept it? Well deserved. Long after Jake had fallen asleep, the word continued to reverberate in my mind. It was obvious that our ideals and paths diverged. Wondering how I had missed the indications and where we were going from here, I lay awake and stared at the ceiling. Following that initial argument with Jake around money and pride, I had the hope that we would eventually reconcile. But was I mistaken? Let's go on to the in-law stage. They were left with a unique kind of disarray. Jake's parents weren't exactly the epitome of independence. My family's affluence was like a beacon to them, and they had a knack of spotting a free dinner from a great distance. Frank is talking endlessly about this great business possibility that just required a minimal investment to get off the ground. One evening, as we are all gathered in our small living room, "So, Sweetheart Emma, Carol begins, her voice brimming with that artificial sweetness that, given your family's wealth, may give you cavities. You could probably assist us with ease. It is really certain. I made an effort to remain calm. I did, really. Carol, as I previously mentioned, Frank, we are handling our finances on our own. This has nothing to do with my parents' finances. However, Frank, yes, he has the tenacity of a door-to-door salesperson. Emma, please. You wouldn't feel it. To your dad, what are a few thousand? In a weekend, he most likely spends that on golf. I was astounded by the boldness. They had the audacity to treat my family's hard-earned money as though it were theirs to keep while they were sitting in our house and eating our meals. Jake attempts to act as a mediator. Perhaps they're right. You mean it's simply a loan? We could assist. Family? Family? The word Jake almost strangled me. We made a decision when. We're supposed to support your parents' aspirations? The room became quite chilly. Carol, never one to let a dramatic situation pass unexploited, I piped up. I never hear, anyhow. We believed that families supported one another. However, if you're going to be frugal, stingy? I was seeing red now. Working for what you have isn't being stingy. Carol, it's known as responsibility. Perhaps you ought to give it a go sometime. Despite Frank's best efforts, the harm had already been done. Look, Emma, don't be angry. Here, we are only conversing. Speaking, correct? I was unable to conceal my sarcasm. It seems like all we ever discuss is how my family can help you with your issues. I stayed awake that night, looking at the ceiling, after they had finally departed and Jake had apologized to his parents for the mistake. It was more than a simple miscommunication. Two individuals who regarded me as a walking, talking ATM rather than a daughter-in-law completely invaded our life. The birth of our daughter, Lily, changed the course of our lives. I was a little surprised. You believe that having a grandchild would make people more positive? Not so much with Jake's parents, that is. They must have brought the cheapest onesie from the bargain bin when they arrived at the hospital. The clearance tag was still on it. However, you would have thought that World War III was going to break out in that hospital room when my parents arrived with a gorgeous hand-knit blanket and other excellent baby stuff. They're really putting on a show, aren't they? Looking over the presents with a mixture of jealousy and contempt, Carol joked. Tossing money around must be pleasant. That rather than all this nonsense, they might have simply bought you a house. Jake laughed and added his voice. You see, Mum has a point. Your parents certainly don't hide a residence that may have been more useful. All they could speak about was how my parents should have spent their money, which made my heart sink as I held our newborn. It hurt. Hearing Jake repeat what his mother said, did they see our daughter as nothing more than a cash sign? I repressed my mounting rage and attempted to maintain harmony. Well, the price tag isn't the point, is it? The notion is what matters. Frank, however, wasn't going to let it go. Yes, of course. Yes. However, when you consider it, it's a pleasant little real estate investment. It's a gift that never stops giving. It was a stressful trip home from the hospital. Jake attempted to patch things up by claiming that his parents were just archaic and had no intention of doing so. However, the seed was sown. I began to question why Jake had actually married me. Was the primary attraction my family's bank account, or was it love? During one of their unannounced trips a few weeks later, Carol brought it up once more. With Lily squirming in my arms and us all squeezed into our living room, Carol couldn't help but make fun of the new pram my mother had purchased for us. Having your parents give Lily all these pricey toys and technology must be great. However, don't you believe it would have been more beneficial to contribute to a housing fund? The passive-aggressive tone permeated her voice as she spoke. I had learned to fear. Jake nodded as he sat next to his mother. We've actually been conversing, sweetie. Instead of giving us more baby items, perhaps your folks might give us a down payment. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? I was blown away. In addition to his parents' unrelenting demands, Jake now supported using the birth of our daughter as leverage to get financial advantage. I had the impression that I was living in a warped world where financial prosperity was more important than family and love. For you, Jake, is that what this is about? Stealing money from my parents. My voice betrayed the hurt I was feeling. I believed that we were all on the same page. For better or worse, not for the wealthy or the poor. Carol only sniffed, but Jake was surprised. It makes sense to consider these factors when your wife's parents are wealthy. After they eventually departed, I lay awake. Looking at the ceiling, Lily slept beside me. I was struck by the realization. My family, my marriage, to them, it was all a deal. And the money was me. To put it mildly, the past few years have been quite the roller coaster. Lily's turned into a feisty little 3-year-old, full of life and fun. However, life presented us with some unexpected turns that I did not anticipate. Mom did it first. It was an unexpected accident. We're all shocked. I was so distraught that I was hardly able to pull myself together for Lily. But Jake, he wasn't asking me how I was doing at first. No, yes it was. How much do you receive from your mothers then? Okay. It felt like a smack in the face. Even my mother wasn't chilly. In accordance with Mom's wishes, he was vulture-like examining her inheritance. I inherited the chain of barbershops. I had no business management experience. But Jake was ready to give his skills. "Babe, let me handle this. You know I've got a talent for business," he said, beaming and full of confidence. I let him take over because I was too distraught to protest. However, I ensured that the ownership document remained in my name. I hoped that he would be able to help us get back on track. Then, Dad died of a heart attack just a year later. Something inside of me was broken by losing both of my parents so quickly. Jake could only discuss what we would inherit from Dad, even though I needed him more than ever. The day following Dad's death, Jake's folks came over. I anticipated maybe a sliver of dignity, a moment of respect for my loss. However, no. They immediately started making assumptions about Dad's riches. "Emma must thus be quite wealthy," Frank responded, almost able to control his joy. "Coming your way." Red caught my eye. "For once, please refrain from discussing money." The words exploded out of me like shrapnel as I yelled. Carol put on her most insulted expression. "No, I never do. All we care about is the future of the family." "You don't have to be impolite." As usual, Jake attempted to mediate the situation. They just want to know. As you might imagine, it's a huge thing," I echoed, my voice increasing. "Jake, all you and your folks can worry about is making money now that my parents are gone." "To you, is that all I am? A bank?" There was silence in the room. A knife might easily cut through the strain. Jake muttered a pathetic apology after glancing at me and then at his parents. But the harm was done. I couldn't tolerate the sight of them, their selfishness, their total lack of humanity. "Get out!" I spoke in a steady but icy tone. Carol was left grumbling to herself. Frank frowned. Jake lingered, attempting to rationalize his parents' actions. However, I had finished listening. Jake burst through the doorway earlier than normal, 2 days after my dad passed away. "I have some fantastic news, darling." He barely controls his excitement as he beams at me. "I've made an agreement to sell the hairdressing chain. Is it not unbelievable?" My jaw nearly hit the floor. "What? What did you do? Not even asking me?" I was furious, experiencing a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. Before we really got started, his parents arrived, eager to celebrate like if we had won the lottery. They brought up this feast from some posh restaurant and a bunch of pamphlets that screamed high roller. Carol was beaming as she waved those pamphlets at me. "You know what, honey? We put down a deposit on a beach property and sold the existing unit. All of us are relocating to the seashore." I gazed at her, feeling like I was imprisoned in some awful dream. "Wait a moment. What are you?" I was not questioned about relocating. With the winds and all the heat, I don't want to live beside the beach. With a child. Have you gone insane? Carol just waved off my concerns like I was talking about the weather. "Oh, don't you worry about it. We have a cruise arranged as well. You ought to accompany us. It will be amazing." "From where is this money coming?" I questioned my skinny patience. "Well, sweetheart, money is irrelevant now that your father has died and the salons have been sold. We're ready for life now. Consider it. Yachts, private jets. The dream is being lived by us." Carol's eyes were nearly glowing with money signs. I looked at Jake in complete bewilderment. Why are we even discussing the sale of my mother's company once more? And, darling, what's this bullshit about being prepared for life? It makes sense. It will be too much to handle 2 companies. We must concentrate on what will provide more profits. For our future, that is. For the future of our daughter? What I was hearing was unbelievable. The boldness, the greed, it was just too much. Show me the financials for the salon, I insisted. Before we make any hasty decisions, I want to see everything. Jake writhed and avoided seeing. It all comes down to our future and ensuring our comfort. His parents joined the chorus, encouraging me to just let go and enjoy the windfall. But all I saw when I looked at them were vultures circling. Why is there such a hurry to sell the hair salons? I pressed, wanting Tom to answer. Jake gave a shrug, the image of phony rationality. Look, sweetie, after your father has left, it just doesn't make sense to juggle both enterprises. We were able to concentrate on what generates greater revenue. In contrast to the salons, the vehicle oil thing is a treasure trove. At this, his parents became alert and offered their $0.02. Think about it, darling. You could be able to live in luxury if you sell those small stores. You don't need to spend time on them. With a voice full of greed, his mother called. My skin crawled as I saw them nearly drooling over my wealth. Now, I want you to go. With a solid voice and a greater resolve, I said, we should be grieving for my father now, not rejoicing in his legacy. Jake attempted to speak, but I interrupted him. And something else. I inherited this. We're discussing mine. You have no say in this, nor do your parents. When they realized I wasn't the pushover, the air became icy. They believed I was. With stronger scowls and hefty stride, they departed, leaving me to think about the alone struggle that was ahead. The daybreak following my father's burial discovered me in a state of sadness. The world around me dimmed to a boring gray. Jake made the decision to bring his own brand of color back into our lives at that point. During a cardboard tasting breakfast, he set out to accomplish his goals. We must immediately schedule a meeting with your father's company's founders, Jake said, his voice like a dagger cutting through the silence. I halted a slice of bread halfway to my lips and glanced at him. My father was just buried, Jake. Can't we wait? It takes me a while to take it all in. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed my worries. Time is money, sweetheart. We must move quickly. I contacted our family lawyer in frustration and in search of clarification, requesting an overview of my father's business activities and a breakdown of the barbershop chain's current situation. Information that I believed would provide me with a foundation. After a month that passed in a haze of financial documents and legalese, Jake and his parents returned to our home. Without even saying hello, they were all brimming with unwanted advice and proposals laced with greed. Jake jumped right in. I've been thinking, I'd be a great leader for your dad's business. His accusation was so outrageous that I couldn't even speak. He wasn't finished, though. I'll also require a new vehicle, something reminiscent of a business magnate. Before I could even come up with an answer, the newest BMW ought to solve the problem. Carol jumped in with her own absurd requests. The seaside home is nearly ready. All we have to do is add $300,000 more, plus some for deer and furnishings. I anticipate that you will create an account for me. I need to keep my lifestyle after all. I understood what I had to do after hearing their incessant requests. It was like a switch flicked inside me. The divorce papers will no longer be held like a shield by Mrs. Niece. I moved ahead, cutting through their conversation. We must speak, Jake. Placing the papers on the coffee table in front of him, I made the announcement. His face wrinkled into a scowl as he scooped them up. So what is this? He tried to seem casual, but his voice was tremulous. Divorce paperwork. Every word I spoke was intentional. I understand. Jake, I've got the company audited. It has been driven into the ground by you. Because of your administration, it is on the verge of collapse. His face drained of color. A culpable youngster exposed in deception. I was attempting to improve it. His reasons were as weak as his confidence as he stammered. Improve it by letting go of our best employees and ignoring the main factors that contributed to the company's success. Fueled by a mixture of betrayal and wrath, I raised my voice. Always the meddler, Carol couldn't help but step in. Let's not forget that he has the right to half of everything, sweetheart. After all, assets are bound by marriage. I couldn't help but chuckle, but there was no joy in it. Nice effort, but everything's been in my name since before I made the horrible mistake of marrying your son. I don't give him anything. There was silence in the room. They were taken aback. Their entire plan is falling apart. And another thing, I said, gazing Jake down. You will repay all of the money. You've caused the company to suffer. Each and every dime. Jake's response to the divorce's reality was to grovel frantically, begging me to change my mind. Please. Can't we discuss this? There must be an alternative, he pleaded. Desperation crackled in his voice. Not to be surpassed in terms of drama, his parents began their own heartfelt performance. They bemoaned the fact that they had invested all of their money in the now fragile beachfront home. Without the next installment, everything will be lost for us. His mother wailed, her tears streaming freely. Please think of what this means for us. My heart hardened by their past behavior. I listened, feeling nothing but icy indifference to their situation. That's your mess, I'm sorry. I spoke in an unflinching tone. With renewed determination, I led them to the door and shut it in this phase of my life. I tried not to think about the past in the days that followed. Instead, I sold the flat where Jake and I used to live and concentrated on the future. Just enough money was raised from the sale to buy a charming, inviting home that would give my daughter and I a fresh start. As soon as I walked inside our new house, I felt relieved, at ease, and able to assist us in a way that had been lacking for far too long. The legal system moved slowly but steadily, and when Jake was eventually apprehended, he was told to make up for the damage he had caused to the hairdresser chain. The courts decided that his carelessness had a cost, and in order to pay his debts, he had to sell his portion of our former flat. For once, seeing him held responsible seemed like a bittersweet justification of the suffering he had caused us. One day, my ex-mother-in-law was on the other end of my phone when it suddenly rang, her voice tinged with desperation. We're stuck. To acquire a property, we need assistance. Any sum would be beneficial. I was astounded by her audacity as she begged. I inhaled deeply to gather my thoughts before answering. You made your bed, I said in a firm, determined tone. You should lie in it now. Calling off. A mix of feelings rushed over me. Fury at their ongoing attitude of entitlement, but also a profound sense of release from their grasp. Life eventually began to improve after everything that transpired, including the divorce and the struggle to regain control of my mom's hair salon business. It was a challenging struggle, but gradually the salons began to recover their previous spark. It was a triumph to get back the best stylists we had lost. Seeing them return through those doors, prepared to return to our chairs and work their spell, the scene seemed to spring to life once again. It turned out that I was more suited for the corporate sector than I had thought. Each day was a new lesson, a fresh surprise about what I could do if it hadn't been for being cornered by life's harsh twists. I might never have unearthed this aspect of me. For the time being, managing my dad's cartwheel company was just another challenge. I made the decision to hire a manager to guide the ship while I regained my bearings. I made it plain that I was still in charge and told him, "It's all yours for now, but keep me in the loop. Maybe at the age of 20, once Lily is old enough. If she's interested, I'm considering giving it to her. I want her to have choices so she may follow her own path." Meanwhile, I'm sinking my toes into it, learning the ropes. Lily and I were alone in our new house, which was a peaceful place, an entirely different world from the chaos we had left behind. Yes, it was little, but it belonged to us. A location where we could develop, recover, and create something new. There was laughing everywhere. Every crevice holds a memory we created in the garden together. I felt so much better after hearing Lily giggle. "Mommy, I want to be like you when I grow up." With awe and admiration in her eyes, she would say, "You will become even more remarkable." In response, I would draw her into an embrace. I sensed deep down that we were on the threshold of something fantastic. Together, we were unstoppable, with hopeful hearts and wide arms prepared to face whatever was ahead. Story 3, Hello, I'm Kate. You're not used to stories like mine. The edges are a little rough. It's kind of like me. You see, my dad decided he had had enough when I was 5 years old. One day, just got up and went. Mom, Clara. She didn't take it well, to be honest. Although I can't hold her accountable, I definitely received the worst treatment. "Do your fucking chores, Kate." Like a dagger, Clara's voice would pierce the quiet of our little, disorganized home. I felt like a burden because of the way she made me feel. "Mom, I'm doing them." I'd shoot back, attempting to keep my voice steady. I quickly discovered that retaliating simply made matters worse. I couldn't help myself occasionally, though. She would simply sneer and remark something about how worthless I was. Like my dad. It hurt. I couldn't even recall him clearly. However, Clara claimed that I was a live reminder of the guy who had abandoned us, a spitting image. She would be gone much of the time trying to make ends meet for us. That is what she asserted. I spent a lot of evenings alone, or worse, with her friends who hardly tolerated my existence. "Watch out for Kate," she'd say, as if I was some pet she couldn't be bothered to tend for the few times she was home. Affection was in scarce supply. "Pat is distracted up front." Yes, there is. I made an effort to update her on my day. Talking to a wall was like that. I attempted to give her a hug one evening. All I wanted was to be her daughter. She tensed up and shoved me away, you know. "Now, what do you want?" Eyeing me as if I had asked for the moon, she snapped. "Nothing," I muttered as I took a step back. After that, I learned to quit requesting hugs. It wasn't any better in school. At every parent-teacher conference, I was the quiet kid, the one wearing secondhand clothing, and the mom who never showed up. "Kate, why is your mother never here?" "What should I say?" the other children would ask. That she was unconcerned. On one occasion, Clara returned home in a terrible temper that was worse than normal. She'd had a quarrel with one of her pals, the sort who was meant to monitor me, but instead let me fend for myself. "Kate, why aren't you more like other kids? Sitting there with your dumb books, look at you. Your father is exactly like you. An absolute waste of room." I bit my lip to contain my tears. It would only become worse if we argued. I didn't know what I was apologizing for, but all I could say was, "Sorry, Mom." I stayed in bed that night and listened to the house's quiet. It was too much. The sensation of being so undesired and rejected. One day, I told myself, things will be different. I wouldn't end up bitter and alone. Like Clara, I had no idea how I would pull it off. However, I had to think that life was more than this. Then Mark appeared. He was wedded in a flash. All of a sudden, we were once more a family. But when Lily was born, it was as if I became invisible. A ghost prowling the corridors of a home that had lost its sense of place. "Look at your sister, Kate. Why are you unable to emulate her?" Mom used to say that, looking at Lily with a warmth I hadn't seen in a long time. I searched but was unable to recall the last time she gave me that look. I shrugged, seeking to avoid the hurt of her words. "Mom, what do you mean?" She let out a frustrated and disappointed sigh. "Lily is so delicate, yet so well put together. How about you? You're always hiding in those loose-fitting garments. Who knows? If you tried, you could be attractive." In her turbulent home, Mark would occasionally step in as a kind mediator. "Clara, Kate is perfectly acceptable as she is. She is sweet and intelligent." Mom, however, would interrupt him. Her tone was icy. "I am conversing with my daughter. Mark, stay out of this." The distance between Lily and me widened as she embraced her role as the treasured kid. She sabotaged me while grinning since she knew she was the favorite and took advantage of it. "Mom, Kate won't share her cosmetics with me." Lily would lie, knowing full well I had hardly enough for herself. "I purchased that for you both." Mom would snap at me without trying to check the truth. "Why must you be so self-centered all the time?" However, I would begin, but a glance would quiet me. Mark, God bless him, attempted to bring about peace, although his attempts were frequently unsuccessful. Lily purposefully knocked her glass of juice on my papers one evening as I was helping her with her schoolwork. "I'm sorry," she remarked, hardly a hint of guilt in her voice. Lily, expressed regret to your sister. Mark, who was watching the situation, said firmly. Lily turned on her manipulative abilities and pouted. "I didn't intend to. Dad, I apologize." "Kate," she told a lie. Her apologies was as meaningless as her eyes. At the tail end, Mom entered, her gaze flitting between us without missing a beat. She took Lily's side. "Can't you tell that she's sorry, Kate? Put an end to the drama and tidy up." I'm simmering with frustration. The unfairness of it all burned in my chest as I cleaned up the mess. The same thing happened every time. Lily's word against my... And in Mom's view, I was always the bad guy. I called Mark Dad at a vulnerable moment one day, feeling a mixture of desperation and a need for a connection. It came out as naturally as breathing, but the consequences were severe and swift. Mom's face contorted into a mask of rage. "You dare! Kate, you have a father, and he is not Mark. You're just trying to replace him because he didn't want you." Her words knocked the breath out of my lungs like a physical blow. Mark seemed stunned, caught between his wife and stepdaughter, a mute witness to my humiliation. My voice simply broke, the anguish too deep for tears. "I thought what? That you could act as though nothing is wrong. That you might create the ideal small family for us," Mom said in a poisonous tone. Every word was a dagger pointed directly at my heart. I eventually withdrew to my room. Behind me, I could hear Lily laughing. In a household split by partiality and quiet conflicts, I was the outsider, the unwanted. Mark tried to offer solace, but his kindness was a balm on a wound too deep to heal. It wasn't easy growing up. By no means. Things at home escalated from awful to utterly horrible as I entered my adolescent years. With Mom as her strongest supporter, Lily was developing into a miniature dictator as her criticisms became more severe. One afternoon, I was trying on outfits in my room. The door opened just a little. I could hear Lily snickers from the corridor. "Look at Kate attempting to dress up like putting lipstick on a pig," she jeered, not even attempting to suppress her voice. I flinched, the hurt of her words hitting more than I cared to acknowledge. "Lily, stop talking." I retaliated, not so much furious as hurt. Like a hot knife, Mom's voice sliced through the tension. "Don't speak to your sister that way, Kate. Lily is correct, too. You are aware. Those clothing do nothing for you." I felt a mixture of embarrassment and rage as I stood there. Although I knew it would just make matters worse, I still wanted to yell and reprimand them both. Mark entered without realizing the impending storm. "What's all the noise about?" he questioned, gazing between us. "Lily is simply being the endearing person she always is," I mumbled, my tone brimming with irony. Mark let out a sigh while wearing a dejected expression. "For once, girls, can we all just get along? Then tell her to quit making fun of me." As usual, Lily played the victim and complained. "I'm not the one beginning things." I objected, but it fell on deaf ears. Mark only shook his head and walked away, leaving me to fend for myself yet again. The next day at school, I overheard some kids talking about a party for a fleeting moment. I contemplated the thought of going, of being normal for a change. Reality then slammed back in. I couldn't bring anyone home. Mom would make sure any friend or boy I liked would flee for the hills with her words. Mom was having one of her outbursts about my appearance one evening. "You might be pretty if you truly tried. Kate, take a look at Lily. She looks after herself." I was at my breaking point. "You continuously compare me to her, but why?" "I'm not Lily." Mom merely rolled her eyes because she sets a wonderful example. "Your sister has a lot to teach you." The statements felt like a smack in the face. Lily's perfection and my inadequacy were the constant topics of conversation. Alone in my room, my heart thumping in my chest, I stormed out. I started crying. In this family, I was obviously the odd one out. The ongoing letdown. And it seemed like it would never be enough, no matter how hard I tried. It must have been thrilling to find love, perhaps for the majority of individuals. But for me, it felt like walking through a minefield, blindfolded. I needed a little kindness after everything that had happened at home. Something warm and genuine. However, every time I believed I had discovered it, everything exploded in my face. Jake and I met at work. He was witty, had a great grin, and didn't seem to notice my discomfort. We hit it off, and for a minute there, I thought, wow, maybe this might be it. One night, I decided to bring him home, thinking it'd be safe. A huge error. "Kate, who's this?" Looking at Jake as if he were a bug she had discovered behind the sink, Mom inquired. "Mom, this is Jake. We collaborate," I spoke, attempting to maintain a steady tone. Jake smiled and extended his hand courteously. "It's good to meet you, lady." Mom smiled tightly and simply nodded. It began as soon as we sat down. It was like she had a radar for my vulnerabilities. "Kate isn't very attractive, but she has a nice heart, Jake, I guess. Maintains a tidy room. Isn't that something?" Mom's words were smeared in artificial honey, and her voice was all delicious poison. My heart was sinking, and I could feel my cheeks burning. Jake glanced at me, uncertainty and sympathy in his eyes. That look, it just nearly killed me. In fact, I believe Kate is fantastic. Really humorous and intelligent. In an attempt to defend me, Jake said, but Mom wouldn't have it. Yes, of course. Yes. However, guys must always use caution. Kate is one of those clinging girls. Think every date signifies wedding bells? Every statement was a dagger to Mom. The evening was coming to an abrupt end. Jake and any hope of us both laughed. At work, he was cool but aloof. He couldn't be blamed. Who would want to get into that smoldering mess? Jake wasn't the only one. Tom, Darren, and a few of other people were present. Distinct faces. The same tale. Either Mom would frighten them away with her warnings, or Lily would contribute by revealing some fictitious scandal about me. After that, I stopped taking guys home, began to meet them outside, but the harm had already been done. I lost confidence. Every day it seemed like a ticking time bomb, waiting for the moment they'd find out about my wacky family and bail. I returned home one evening after yet another failed date to find Mark sitting by himself in the living room. Rough night? His weary face was shadowed by the TV as he inquired. You might say that indeed. I sagged down next to him and answered, You're a catch, Kate. You are aware of that. Any guy would be lucky to have you, Mark stated, honest as always. I truly wanted to trust him, but I couldn't afford the luxury of believing. Not with Mom and Lily. They were always there to remind me that I wasn't good enough. Regards, Mark. You just have to keep looking, don't you? I tried to grin, but I was crying on the inside. Yes, continue searching. He's out there, Kate. Someone will recognize you for who you truly are. Mark bolstered his hope, a dim glow in the shadows. I nodded, appreciative of Mark's faith in me, but not very convinced. Perhaps one day someone would see me through the chaos, remain, and see past it. I would continue looking for a love that could endure the upheaval in my life until then. Here I am at the age of 27, Kate. A few years later, making a niche for myself in life. I've been living in my small piece of freedom and working as an economist at this large corporation, which pays well. A little flat that is just mine. The true game changer, however, I met Alex. He's no ordinary man. He's the guy. The one that I can truly visualize in its entirety. Till death do us part scenario with one evening lounging on my thrift store couch. Alex turned to face me with gentle but serious eyes. I believe it's time for us to present ourselves to our parents, Kate. I mean, if we're serious about this, and I know I am, they should know, right? My stomach turned over. Seeing his parents? Yes, my relatives. Alex, that's a very other situation. I'm all for you, you know, but my family, it's not easy. His thumb brushed mine as he took my hand. Hey, everyone has their own crazy at home. How horrible might it be? I groaned, spilling the beans about the whole situation with Mom and Lily, leaving out no unpleasant detail. To his surprise, he didn't run away. Rather, he tightened his grip on my hand. He responded, We'll face them together. And that's it. I had a little more courage. So I bit the bullet and called Mark out of everyone. In the changing sands of my family's drama, he has been a rock. Mark, I have some news. I'm seeing someone, Alex. We are also engaged. A pause occurred. Then, Kate, that's amazing. When will we be able to see him? Mark's excitement felt comforting. He didn't skip a beat, going directly to when. No, not when I exhale. Mark, one had no idea that I would be holding soon. I'm a little nervous about Lily and Mom. Don't be concerned. On this end, I'll make things easier. Bring that young man over, please. It's about time our area saw some positive news. Hanging up, Alex, who had been observing me with a mixture of interest and worry, turned to face me. Mark is on board then. This appears to be what we're doing. He smiled and drew me into an embrace. You see? The first step is down. The rest we'll take care of fine. However, I was unable to get rid of the anxieties as the day drew near. I had a better time meeting Alex's parents than I anticipated. They were kind and accommodating to all your needs, together with possible in-laws. I felt a glimmer of optimism, perhaps too much. I attempted to summon the same hope for the meal at my family's place that was coming up as I paced the length of my living room. Alex, ever the optimist, promised me it'd be all right. But deep down, I sensed the tempest that was coming. There was going to be a confrontation, my past versus my future. But I felt slightly braver having Alex at my side. Nevertheless, I couldn't resist going over every situation. Every conclusion is more dramatic than the one before it. Alex caught me mid-step and pulled me into his arms, saying, "Kate, it'll be okay. Whatever happens, we're in it together." As Alex and I got closer to my mom's house, the air was heavy, and we were both preparing for what was about to happen. Little did we know, the evening had a surprise in store. Kate, Alex. At last, Mom met us at the door with an unfamiliar tenderness in place of her customary coldness. As soon as the introductions were over and we were comfortable, the bomb fell. "According to Kate, Alex, you are the head of your firm and all that," Mom murmured, her eyes brightening in a manner I hadn't witnessed in a long time. Ever modest, Alex simply nodded. I wouldn't describe myself as a big shot, but I have advanced. It only required that. Mom was suddenly beaming and praising Alex for everything he said. If it weren't so painfully evident, the metamorphosis would have been almost humorous. By the time dinner arrived, the mood had completely changed. Every other sentence Mom used was an attempt to highlight how amazing our family was. Lily in particular. Lily was just admitted to the school's honors program, Mom boasted, flashing a look at Alex as if to say, "See, we're a family of achievers." Lily added her own decorations, soaking in the attention. "Yes, I have consistently been at the top of my class. It seems to be a familial trait." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. In a nonverbal gesture of support, Alex squeezed my hand beneath the table. Mark, bless him, attempted to maintain equilibrium by bringing up a few of my accomplishments, but Mom dominated him by bringing up Lily and, whenever feasible, Alex's stellar profession. As the evening went on, Mom's strategies became even more obvious. She was establishing the foundation and attempting to strengthen her relationship with Alex, most likely to secure her share of our newfound wealth. "You must be from a really motivated family, Alex. Don't you believe that teaching our kids certain values is crucial?" With her eyes darting between Lily and Alex, Mom spoke. To his credit, Alex managed it with poise. "Of course. Integrity and hard effort pay off handsomely." With a gaze that included me in the discourse, as we prepared our reasons to go, he responded thoughtfully. Alex insisted that we visit more frequently, and Mom was essentially holding on. "Alex, you have to return shortly for dinner." As we said our goodbyes, she practically ignored me and exclaimed, "It's been such a pleasure." Alex whistled softly as they got inside the car. "Well, it was something else. Your mother is a master at making a big deal out of nothing." I leaned back in my chair and sighed. "I apologize for it. She's well. She gets to see what she wants." Alex grasped my hand and squeezed it comfortingly. "Hey, don't forget that we are all in this together. That cannot be altered by your mother's scheming." My phone buzzed the day after the dinner, while I was still in shock at my mother's performance. It was Alex, and he sounded strange, as if he was having trouble maintaining his composure. "You will not believe this, Kate. Your mother gave me a call." With a tense voice, Alex began. I went cold. "You got my call. Even so, how did she obtain your number?" He let out a sigh. "You left some work documents at their place, and I found it, I guess. But pay attention to what she said. It's crazy." My heart fell. "What did she say?" "Alex, she requested that I leave you, to marry Lily." "Rather," he blurted out, and I could just hear his incredulity over the phone. It was as though someone had punched me in the stomach. "What is she?" The statement seemed weird, like we were talking about someone else's life, not ours. "Yes, I am aware that it is messed up, but I have a suggestion, Kate. We can expose her. Let everyone see her true self," Alex said with a tone of determination. "In the future, I'm seated in a cafe with my mom and Alex at a neighboring table, my heart racing, my wig and sunglasses on. As if she were negotiating a commercial deal, my mom proceeds to lay out her ridiculous proposition. Unaware that Alex's jacket included a dictaphone, my mom leaves the cafe with a grin on her face and a sense of confidence as the meeting comes to an end. I shake my head as I watch her leave. I had forgotten who this woman was. A stranger posing as my mother. Alex joined me. Anger and worry were mixed together on his face. "Are you all right, Kate?" I glanced up at him. "My choice. Clearly? Yes, I'm all right. Come on, let's get home. We need to organize a wedding." The time had come to expose the truth, for masks to be removed, revealing the raw reality underlying. I entered my parents' home as someone who had seen through their dishonesty, not as the Kate they believed they could control. My mother welcomed me with a smug look that made my stomach flip as I went in. Look who made the decision to appear. "Unfortunately, Alex will no longer be joining us. Lily is the one he picked over you." Her voice was brimming with fake sympathy as she gloated. Beside her, Mark was perplexed. He kept looking at me, "Lily, and Mom. What's happening?" His voice was laden with worry as he inquired. I didn't answer right away. Rather, Alex, who had followed me in, met my gaze. With a wordless nod, we both agreed that the charade should come to an end. "In fact, Alex is here, Mom," I remarked, standing back to reveal him. Mom's expression wavered, her self-assurance briefly ebbing away before she covered it up with apathy. As Alex pressed play on the recorder, the room was filled with excitement. Knowing the weight of what was about to be heard, my heart was pounding as my mother's voice filled the room. The mood changed, and you could feel it. Kate was never someone I loved. Every word she said was echoed by Mark and a dagger. His money is the reason I married him, not much more. The recording finished, but its influence lingered, thick and oppressive. The stillness that followed was broken only by the sound of my stepfather's voice, strained and full of hurt. This is unbelievable. At last, Mark spoke, his voice barely audible above a whisper but brimming with passion. His eyes went from the recorder to my mother, expecting some denial, some hint of guilt. But there was none. Mark got to his feet, his eyes sharpened and his resolve obvious. "That's all. I'm finished. I'd like a divorce," he said, his voice more determined now. "You must get out of the house." The fallout was swift. Charges were made. Our family's foundation was irrevocably ripped apart and tears were shed. Lily and my mother, who had worked together on the plan, were now having to deal with the fallout. Isolated because to their own dishonesty and avarice. For my part, I had an odd sensation of calm as I stood there in the middle of the mayhem. The truth, even though it was difficult, it had released me from the web of falsehoods that had trapped us for so long. Over the next few weeks, I concentrated on reconstructing. With Alex, I'm laying the groundwork for a future built on love and trust. In front of friends and those who genuinely cared about us, we were married in a modest, private ceremony. There was Mark. His presence served as a reminder of the familial bonds that persisted in spite of everything. I had to make the painful choice to break off contact with Mom and Lily. Although it wasn't simple, it was essential to my pleasure and peace of mind. I was standing hand in hand with Alex. I understood that this was only the start. A fresh chapter free from the shadows of the past. We were prepared to take on any challenge, together.